Buck is a bitch. Don't, bruh. I hate Buck. I hate young Buck, fam. Buck is and so we ain't gonna talk about Buck at all, period.
And Buck, I think that's over. I think that's done, but
What do you mean?
I think his career is finished.
Count on my dude.
You said what?
Take me off the camera.
What's up with you and 50?
Take me off the camera.
What you mean take you off the camera, bro?
Take you off. You don't want to be recorded.
So he said you what train is it?
From the streets to straight up stardom, this story starts wild and only gets crazier from here. Young Buck's rise wasn't some smooth fairy tale climb. It was rough, chaotic, and packed with hustle. Growing up in Nashville, Tennessee, young David Brown wasn't living comfy at all. He bounced around nonstop, from Sea Fright in North Nashville to the J.C. Napier projects down south, then over to the South 7th projects. By the time he hit 8 years old, he already knew the whole city like the back of his hand, moving through different hoods and seeing all kinds of street situations that later shaped his entire sound. To put some money in his pocket and help out at home, young Buck was on a legit grind every single day. He pumped gas for tips, cut lawns, washed cars, whatever he could do to bring in a couple dollars. Music became his getaway, his peace, and his biggest dream all at once. He started freestyling with his Day One crew, battling anyone ready to step up, turning heads, and slowly building a real name for himself in Nashville's underground hip-hop scene. Then things took a wild turn that showed just how hungry Buck really was for a come-up. One day, Buck and his homie found a BG Chopper City CD, and on the back was a phone number for Cash Money Records. These two young dudes, barely knowing what they were doing, actually picked up the phone and called that number with a crazy idea that would change their whole path. They straight up told Cash Money they wanted to book them for a show in Nashville for around $5,000, and somehow, like pure luck mixed with confidence, they actually pulled it off and booked that whole setup. The show never happened, but what did go down changed Buck's entire life in a huge way. Buck and his guy, Little Jimmy, ended up meeting everybody at Cash Money Records, and that moment flipped his whole path forever. At just 14 years old, Buck made one of the biggest decisions he would ever make. He left school completely to chase rap full time. No one is here to judge whether that move was right for someone that young, but it proves how serious he was and how much heart he had for this dream. This wasn't some side hobby or something he did when he felt like it.
But what did happen was Buck and Lil Jimmy ended up meeting everybody at Cash Money Records, and the first thing that Birdman told Buck was to spit a freestyle for him, and he put him up against Lil Wayne at that time, and they went back and forth. And that ended up impressing Birdman.
Music was his escape, his mission, and his shot at building a real future for himself. Buck started rocking with Cash Money, hoping to finally get his situation lined up, but as the years rolled by, he said he spent around 3 to 4 years there without a single track of his ever dropping. He was basically pushed to the background while artists like Lil Wayne, Juvenile, BG, and the rest of the crew took off and hit superstar levels. The only trace Buck had from his entire Cash Money run was a quick appearance in the Big Timers, Big Ballin' music video. By 1999, Buck was done with the whole situation. He watched everyone around him blow up while he stayed stuck on the sidelines, and he finally made the hard call to walk away from Cash Money and head back to Nashville to take control of his career his own way. Those years at Cash Money weren't a total loss. Buck picked up real game about how the music world moves and made powerful connections, including DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia and Juvenile. Those relationships would end up becoming major keys later on. When he got back to Nashville, Buck linked up with his local crew and started pushing his music independently with pure determination. No label support, no corporate machine, just grind, hustle, and raw ambition. On August 22nd, 2000, he and his homie D-Tay dropped Thug Until the End, and something unexpected happened that shocked the whole local scene. This independent project actually charted on Billboard, hitting number 34 on the US R&B chart and number 17 on the US Independent chart. For an unknown Nashville artist with no major backing, this was massive and proved his voice really carried weight. Buck ended up moving around 10,000 units, which might sound small compared to big label numbers, but for someone pushing music out the trunk with no machine behind him, it was serious. The real win was the message it sent. It showed him that this rap dream wasn't fantasy, it was possible, and people were really listening to what he had to say. Then came the moment that shook his whole world, a wake-up call that made him realize he had to choose between the streets or the music. Buck explained what happened, saying, "Out of my ordeal back in the streets, I ended up getting shot in a home invasion, in a robbery, 1 in the arm, 2 or 1 in the upper thigh area. It was enough for me to wake up and really realize that, if this keep going on like this, I'm able to get killed." That moment hit him hard and forced him to rethink everything. Right when Buck needed a lifeline the most, one came through his old Cash Money connect, DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia. Paul had always respected Buck's raw talent and sharp pen, and when he heard about the shooting, he hit him up immediately. He had Project Pat scoop Buck from Nashville and bring him out to Memphis to lock in and lay down some tracks. Those studio sessions turned into Buck's first major album placement, Memphis on 3-6 Mafia's When the Smoke Clears 66-61 album. This was the break he had been waiting for, the kind of shine that could open real doors for what was coming next. But even with that big moment, Buck didn't end up signing with 3-6 Mafia. He headed back to Nashville and kept grinding independently, only now he had more exposure, more eyes on him, and way more connections than before. Now let's slide into how Buck actually ended up in G Unit, because that whole situation is wild. Right when his name started buzzing again, Birdman, his old Cash Money link, reached out with a new proposition.
Buck ended up coming on with them and hopefully having his situation figured out as well. But as years went on, Buck said he spent 3 to 4 years with Cash Money and none of his music ever got released. He got essentially put on the back burner while the other artists on Cash Money like Lil Wayne, Juvenile, BG, so on and so forth ended up blowing up.
Times had changed heavy since Buck first tried to make it work with Cash Money in the late 90s. The label had blown up for real. Bigger offices, luxury cars everywhere, and a whole new level of power behind the brand. Birdman wanted Buck to join a new group he was building called Head Bussa, and Buck flew back to New Orleans to see what was up. But the moment he got there, things started sliding right back into the same problems he faced the first time, like history repeating itself all over again. After sitting around for about a week with no paperwork, no real progress, and no signs that the deal was moving anywhere, Buck started getting irritated. He wasn't that same inexperienced 14-year-old kid anymore. He was a grown man with responsibilities, momentum back home, and no time to waste just waiting in the lobby for something to happen. Then something unexpected went down that flipped everything. Juvenile pulled up to the Cash Money offices and was shocked to see Buck sitting there waiting. Juvenile was in the middle of his own transition, dealing with his own problems with Cash Money, and right then and there, he made Buck an offer that would switch up his whole path. But here's the part that really shows Buck's street smarts and how sharp he was moving even back then. When Juvenile handed him the contract, Buck took it home, slid it under his bed, and never actually signed it. That was a bold move for someone in his position, but it showed he was thinking ahead and not letting anyone lock him into something that didn't feel solid. During that period, Buck dropped 2 projects, Born to be a Thug on October 10th, 2002, and a compilation with the UTP Players on October 8th, 2002.
And out of my ordeal back in the streets, I ended up getting shot in a home invasion and a robbery. One in the arm and one in the upper thigh area. It was enough for me to wake up and really realize that, yo, if this shit keep going on like this, I'm either to get killed or I'm go to jail. And I really realized that because I was getting down for real. I really started to devote more of my time to the music then, the studio, period.
But even with that, he was never officially signed on paper. Why? Because Buck was paying attention. He had already watched how things worked at Cash Money, and he could see Juvenile was dealing with his own serious issues with the label. The whole situation looked unstable, and Buck wasn't about to tie himself to something that might fall apart any minute. At one point, Juvenile even told Buck that if a better opportunity came his way, he should take it without hesitation. While Buck and Juvenile were on tour, their bus made a stop in New York, and this was 2002 when 50 Cent had the entire city lit up. He was the most talked about artist in New York, and the streets were buzzing like crazy over him. The tour bus driver happened to know 50's former manager, Shaw Money Exile, and Buck kept pressing him, asking if he could help make a connection so they could possibly cook up something together. And somehow, it actually happened. 50 Cent stepped onto that tour bus, but he wasn't there for Buck. He came strictly to record with Juvenile. While Juvenile and 50 were in the back working on tracks, Buck made a clever move. He started playing some of his solo joints for Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo, who were also on the bus. One track hit Banks instantly. He locked in on that beat. Banks grabbed it and took it straight to the back where 50 was recording. 50 ended up jumping on that beat, and that track later became Bloodhound on the legendary Get Rich or Die Trying album. That connection changed everything for Buck. And even though that was a huge moment, it wasn't actually the first track released with all 4 of them together. The first one was A Little Bit of Everything on the 50 Cent Is the Future mixtape. Bloodhound became the track that introduced Buck to the whole mainstream world, putting his name right in front of millions. 50 Cent genuinely liked Buck, but at that moment he couldn't offer him a deal because he wasn't even signed to a major label himself yet. Still, 50 never forgot Buck, and when things finally fell apart with UTP, just like Buck expected, they crossed paths again at the perfect time. That's when everything aligned.
Juvie happened to pull up at the office, and when he pulled up, he was kind of shocked to see me there. I'm like, I've been here for a whole week. And he was like, man, you want to get up out of here for a minute? You know what I'm saying? And I took that ride with Juvie, and that's where my career started with Juvenile.
50 brought Buck to Dr. Dre, and Buck officially signed to G Unit. This was a dream come true for any artist trying to make it in the game, especially someone like Buck who had lived through broken promises, false starts, and letdowns for years. His first major placement on G-Unit Records was Bloodhound on 50's iconic Get Rich or Die Trying album, but 50 had a bigger plan for him. Instead of rushing Buck's solo album, 50 wanted the world to see him as part of the squad first. So G-Unit dropped their group project Beg for Mercy, which introduced Buck as an official member of the team in a major way. The album peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and moved 377,000 copies in its first week. Today, it's sold over 2.7 million in the US and is close to hitting worldwide diamond status. Buck had finally arrived on the biggest stage possible, and the whole hood was watching. Following the signature G-Unit formula, Buck dropped Welcome to the Hood on May 31st, 2004, hosted by DJ Woo Kid, heating up the streets and building hype for his solo debut. Then on July 2nd, 2004, he released the first single, Let Me In, featuring 50 Cent, and it climbed all the way to number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100. Then came the major moment, August 24th, 2004. Buck released his debut album Straight Outta Cashville, and the results were unbelievable. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling 361,000 copies in the first week and went platinum. It was the moment Buck had chased for years, and he finally got the recognition he worked so hard for. The second single, Shorty Wanna Ride, turned into Buck's biggest solo hit ever, climbing all the way to number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. But the numbers weren't even the most important part. Buck did something way bigger. He broke what people used to call the Nashville curse, becoming the first non-country artist from Nashville to hit serious mainstream success in hip-hop for decades. That barrier had blocked countless artists, and Buck tore straight through it, opening the doors for the whole city to finally be seen and heard. Then came November 15th, 2004 at the Vibe Awards, a night that turned into pure chaos and would shadow Buck for years. Dr. Dre, Eminem, 50 Cent, the whole G-Unit squad, and Suge Knight were all in the building. During the event, a man named Jimmy Johnson allegedly put his hands on Dr. Dre, and young Buck was accused of stabbing him moments later. The situation exploded instantly, and Buck ended up going on the run before turning himself in a couple days later. It took about a year and a half before the case wrapped up, and Buck was hit with 3 years of probation plus 80 hours of community service. Even though the final consequences weren't too heavy, this moment became the first real red flag, the first sign that Buck's street instincts and fierce loyalty to his people could end up threatening everything he had built. In 2005, Buck didn't slow down. He pushed even harder and kept expanding his name across the industry. He jumped on 3-6 Mafia's massive hit, Stay Fly, which peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went double platinum. It was another huge moment that kept Buck's momentum strong and showed the world that he wasn't just a one-album success, he was becoming a real force in the game. Buck dropped an independent album to help promote the upcoming G-Unit South artists, a whole movement that 50 had put under Buck's control. Buck wasn't just an artist anymore. He was stepping into executive mode, building his own branch inside the G-Unit empire and creating a lane for talent from the South to finally shine. In 2006, Buck flooded the streets with mixtapes while gearing up for his next major album. On February 6, 2006, he released Case Dismissed, the introduction of G-Unit South with DJ Drama. It was both a celebration of clearing his legal case from the Vibe Awards incident and a public introduction to the artist he was developing under the G-Unit South banner. Buck was leveling up on every side, music, leadership, business, all of it. But around this same time, while Buck was working on his second album, Buck the World, serious tension broke out between 50 Cent and their shared manager, Shaw Money XL. 50 called all the G-Unit members together and told them they needed new management because he was cutting ties with Shaw Money completely. And this moment exposed one of the toughest challenges in Buck's career, his loyalty. Buck had grown extremely close with Shaw Money XL over the years. Their bond was strong in a way that went far beyond business. Buck even said, Shaw Money had became a best friend of mine. I'm the best man on this man's wedding. That's how me and Shy was. Me and Shy were probably closer than me and 50. Him and 50 was. That connection ran deep, and when 50 told the team to cut ties, Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo followed the order immediately. No hesitation. But Buck didn't. He couldn't just walk away from someone he viewed as family, and that loyalty, which had always been one of his strongest traits, suddenly became a liability in 50's eyes. That moment started a shift in the whole dynamic, and the tension behind the scenes began to grow. The tension from 50 started instantly, like it flipped overnight. You'd see Banks, Yayo, and 50 together at shows and major events, but Buck and Shaw Money were left promoting Buck's project completely on their own. Buck believes this played a huge role in why Buck the World didn't hit the same numbers as his debut. It still moved 98,000 copies in the first week and went gold, but without the full G-Unit machine pushing it, it didn't reach the level it could have. Buck the World dropped March 27, 2007, debuting at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with 140,000 first-week sales. But the singles I Know You Want Me and Get Buck didn't take off the way the singles from his first album did. And while all that was happening, 50 started accusing Buck of being cool with people 50 considered enemies. The Game, Jadakiss, Fat Joe, Jim Jones, and others. Buck denied being friendly with any of them. He said he was actually relaying info back to 50 about what those artists were saying.
A week after the deal fizzled out with UTP, 50 Cent ended up calling Young Buck and said, hey, we want that Bloodhound track. We'll pay you $20,000 for it. Let us put it on the album. And the track is getting mixed by Eminem and Dr. Dre.
But 50 saw any communication with them as disloyalty, and that only made their relationship worse. Then 50 claimed Buck was spending money carelessly, wasn't keeping up with his taxes, and that 50 had even helped pay Buck's taxes twice before finally reaching a point where he said he couldn't keep stepping in. By 2008, Buck learned he owed around $300,000 to the IRS, and that turned into a massive problem that followed him hard. The start of 2008 hit him even harder. In January, Buck appeared at a show with Lil Wayne and Birdman, and both of them publicly said Buck should leave G-Unit and join Young Money/Cash Money. And while on stage, Buck seemed to agree with the idea. When 50 saw that footage, he was furious, and the situation between them got even more explosive from that point on. In February 2008, G-Unit dropped a new mixtape called Return of the Body Snatchers Volume 1, and Buck was nowhere on it. Fans were confused because just a few months earlier, they had released a track together called Feel Good. So everyone assumed things were still solid. But then came the moment that blew everything wide open and pushed Buck into a downward spiral he's still climbing out of today. In March 2008, 50 Cent and Young Buck had a private phone call that nobody knew about, except 50 was secretly recording the entire conversation. After that call, things looked cool again, at least on the surface. Buck even showed up on tracks for the G-Unit joint mixtape Elephant in the Sand that same month. For a quick second, it felt like the beef might finally settle down and they could move forward. But that peace didn't last at all. On March 20th, 2008, Yo Raps magazine published an interview where Young Buck said, I'm still waiting on a royalty check period. I've never seen a royalty check since I've signed with G-Unit. So hell yeah, I'll tell you one damn thing. That show money is that good. I've never in my career cashed a royalty check. And here's the wild part. This interview wasn't even new. It had been done months earlier. But the magazine chose to drop it right when Buck and 50 were supposedly making things right. The timing couldn't have been worse, and it hit like a bomb. The moment that interview went live, everything between them flipped again, and this became the spark that pushed the situation into chaos. Buck didn't realize how bad the timing looked, and 50 felt like Buck was going behind his back publicly right after they had tried to fix things in private. That's when cracks turned into full-on fractures, setting off a chain of events that would eventually lead to bankruptcy, career setbacks, and the long road Buck would spend years trying to climb back from. Straight-up sabotage vibes were flying everywhere after that interview dropped. Shaw Money XL jumped in immediately the next day trying to calm the storm, denying rumors and saying Buck had cleared over $10 million while working under 50's guidance. But the situation was already spinning out of control, and things were about to get even messier. On April 7th, 2008, early Monday morning, 50 Cent called into Hot 97 and officially announced that Young Buck was no longer part of G-Unit as a group, even though he was still signed to G-Unit Records as a solo artist. It was a shocking move, and fans couldn't tell if it was business, personal, or both. The following week, the entire G-Unit crew pulled up to Hot 97, and 50 dropped even more info, including the claim that Buck was dealing with a drug problem. Buck stayed quiet for a few weeks, probably trying to process everything that had just hit him all at once. But on May 12th, 2008, he finally fired back with a track called My Interview, addressing being kicked out of G-Unit and responding to the drug accusations with full emotion and frustration. Things fell silent for a moment, until June. That's when Buck made a move that changed his future permanently. On June 15th, 2008, Young Buck went on stage and publicly dissed G-Unit in front of everyone. That moment was the point of no return, the line in the sand that couldn't be erased. Just 2 days later, on June 17th, 2008, 50 Cent released the full secret phone recording, the one where Buck was crying and asking for help during that private conversation. This was a major blow to Buck's image, and the world was watching the fallout happen in real time. The next day, June 18th, 2008, Buck responded with a diss track called The Tape Conversation, and the Game even hopped on the remix showing support. A couple days later, on June 21st, rumors started circulating about a possible collaborative mixtape between Buck and Game called Worth More Than 50 Cent, supposedly dropping in July. But that project never came to life, leaving behind nothing but tension, missed opportunities, and a beef that had now gone way past music. Buck had officially crossed into territory he couldn't walk back from, and his career was about to face challenges tougher than anything he had ever imagined. When G-Unit dropped their second album, Terminate on Sight, on July 1st, 2008, Young Buck was only featured on 4 tracks, basically treated like a guest on a project that should have been his group's album. It was clear something was off, and fans could feel that Buck wasn't being given the same shine as before. For the rest of 2008, Buck didn't release much new music because, according to him, 50 Cent was blocking his ability to record and drop a new album. Since Buck was still officially signed to G-Unit Records, 50 had the power to stop any major releases, which forced Buck to change his approach completely. So in 2009, he took it to the streets and started flooding the game with mixtapes. Here's the wild part. Real fans, the ones who studied Buck's career closely, noticed something deep. 2009, Buck sounded the hungriest he had ever been. His music was raw, emotional, and laser-focused. You could hear the struggle, the frustration, and the determination in every bar. He was trapped in a bad situation, but he poured all of that energy straight into his songs. Buck dropped multiple mixtapes in 2009, including Back for the Streets on April 11th and the heavily praised Back on My Buck on May 26th. Tracks like I Want It All and I Got It featuring Young Jeezy showed Buck at his sharpest, motivated, locked in, and fighting to keep his career alive. But while he was pushing out mixtapes and trying to stay afloat musically, his personal and legal problems were stacking up fast and hitting him hard. By this point, things were getting overwhelming on every front. On August 3rd, 2010, the IRS raided Buck's home over more than $300,000 in unpaid taxes, marking the start of one of the darkest chapters in his entire journey. That raid wasn't just a setback, it was the moment everything collapsed at once. During that IRS raid, officers found a hammer, and because Buck had a prior conviction tied to the 2004 Vibe Award situation, they charged him immediately, even though Buck insisted the weapon belonged to his licensed tour manager. Just 3 days after the raid, Buck dropped a track called My Campaign, turning the chaos straight into music. He had this rare ability to flip pain into bars instantly, and he showed it once again with that record. Then on August 19th, 2010, Buck filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And here's the part people don't talk about enough. Through that bankruptcy move, Buck was actually able to break free from his G-Unit Records contract. It was a strategic decision wrapped inside a desperate moment, but it gave him a fresh shot at independence. He dropped his independent album, The Rehab, on September 7th, 2010, debuting at number 55 on the Billboard 200 and selling a little over 6,400 copies in the first week. Solid numbers for an indie project, but nowhere near the kind of success he once had during his G-Unit run. Meanwhile, the legal problems kept stacking up non-stop. In March 2011, G-Unit Records filed a $10 million lawsuit against Buck, adding even more weight to everything he was already dealing with. But then, out of nowhere, a tiny spark of hope appeared when 50 Cent tweeted late in 2011, "For some reason I think Young Buck is mad at me, who cares? I'm giving my $250,000 back, sucker." It wasn't exactly friendly, but it hinted that the tension might cool down someday. On March 4th, 2012, Buck survived a drive-by shooting outside a club in South Nashville where his girlfriend was hit in the shoulder. The situation shook everyone, but Buck kept moving forward regardless. Then on July 13th, 2012, Buck was officially sentenced to 18 months in prison for the weapons charges tied to that raid. The following month, the IRS held a public auction to sell off nearly everything Buck owned: his jewelry, his studio gear, his personal items, all of it gone. It was one of the lowest points in his life, a moment where everything he had built seemed to be slipping away all at once. They collected around $53,000 from that IRS auction, but the real damage wasn't the money. It was how publicly humiliating the whole situation looked. It showed just how far Buck had fallen, and people couldn't believe it. Buck officially turned himself in August 2012 to start serving his 18-month sentence, stepping into one of the toughest chapters of his life. But on October 2nd, 2013, Young Buck walked out of prison, and what happened next shocked the entire hip-hop world. Behind the scenes, 50 Cent had been fixing his relationships with Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo, and apparently Buck was still on his mind too. Then, on June 1st, 2014, at Hot 97 Summer Jam, 50 Cent brought out all 3 original G-Unit members, and the crowd went crazy. It was an official G-Unit reunion, something nobody saw coming. They dropped 2 EPs, The Beauty of Independence on August 25th, 2014, and The Beast is G-Unit on March 3rd, 2015. Both projects had some serious heat, and fans were hyped thinking the whole squad was finally back on good terms. Buck kept the momentum going by launching his super ambitious 10 series of mixtapes. Projects like 10 Bullets, 10 Bricks, 10 Pints, 10 Bodies, and more between 2015 and 2018. It proved his grind was still unmatched and that he was locked in on his craft. But then, more legal trouble hit again. On July 15, 2016, he got arrested over a situation involving threatening to damage his ex-girlfriend's apartment, and he ended up serving 7 months behind bars. It was another setback during a time when he was trying hard to rebuild. Then in 2018, things finally started looking up again. Buck dropped the single Can't Lose on March 30th, 2018, a straight fire track that deserved way more love than it got. It showed Buck still had that spark in his voice, that hunger, that energy that fans always connected with. Fans were hyped like crazy, but once again, the relationship between him and 50 fell apart. 50 claimed Buck owed him over $300,000 and began sending cease and desists for anything Buck tried to release. Then in 2019, leaked audio of Buck speaking with a trans person went viral, and 50 publicly mocked him online, posting hurtful comments and shutting the door on any future G-Unit reunion. In 2020, Buck filed for bankruptcy again, this time specifically to escape his contract and dodge pending lawsuits from 50. After a long legal battle, Buck lost the case in 2023 and agreed to pay $200,690 of the alleged $250,000 debt. To cover that and other debts, he had to liquidate assets worth about $1.05 million, spending around $445,000 on legal fees and leaving roughly $600,000 for creditors. Then in April 2025, Buck was arrested again and sentenced to 30 days in jail for repeated violations of his bond supervision connected to his ongoing domestic assault case from 2020. He was released around May 12, 2025. His trial has now been pushed to January 12, 2026. But despite the setbacks, Buck seems to be in a much stronger place mentally and emotionally. He's been active on social media, celebrating milestones like the 18th anniversary of Straight Outta Cashville, staying connected with fans, and focusing on building his legacy instead of drowning in old drama. He looks more grounded, more focused, and more determined to write the next chapter of his story. Now, if you're rocking with this story and want more deep dives like this, make sure you like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to see it. Your support helps keep these stories alive.